This crowd rises to its feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect! Lob to Mobley, pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs Media family. I'm your host, Justin Roan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo TV. Watch over 100 channels of live sports and TV for half the cost of cable. There's no contract and no commitment. Try it for free at FuboTV.com. We got an awesome podcast for you guys here. Sometimes the universe throws us a bone. We had this topic in the chamber for a little bit. We booked a great guest for it. And then Evan Mobley gives us the perfect appetizer for this conversation. But before we get to our guests, I must introduce my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, buddy. It was an important second leg of a back-to-back after an absolutely brutal Warriors loss. I feel like I'll tell you what, I bounce back easier these days. It was like that Warriors game didn't even happen.
Muscle memory, man. We definitely need that one. I'm sick of calling games the worst loss of the season. I feel like we've had a few of those recently, and that Warriors one was certainly a qualifier for that. But the important thing is when you have that step back, it's how you respond. And Evan Mobley responded with 38 points. And joining us today from The Athletic, friend of the podcast, one of my favorite people to talk hoops with, Dave DuFour. Dave, welcome back, buddy.
I'm pumped to be here. Pumped to see you guys, man. It's been too long.
It's been way too long.
A true Hall of Fame guest, you know, like a
well,
true
not
guarantor of
the
quality.
Basketball Hall of Fame. Maybe this podcast Hall of
A
Fame.
Chase Down Podcast Hall of Fame. It's not the most prestigious hall, but you're part of it.
Well, I'm honored.
Good. You didn't sound so honored, but I'll take it.
Well, more confused that the podcast has a Hall of Fame. I mean, who is it?
It's an unofficial group.
Adam Mares, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Ty Windish, great guy. I like him.
Sure.
Ty's awesome.
What I was going for is that my dear friend Dave DuFour, whenever he comes on the pod, we have a good conversation.
That's it. Well,
three basketball likers.
Half the time Carter's not on here. Half the time Carter's dodging me. He's like, I can't.
I catch more strays in my personal and professional life than anyone I know. What a cheap shot.
That's not a cheap shot. You're just ducking me all the time on
That's
the pod.
fair.
I mean, you know, I come on here. I want to talk about how good all your favorite players are. And you're just like, I can't with this guy.
Yeah,
well,
that's
because
definitely
Carter
my
doesn't watch the
motivation.
games.
Well, yeah,
Carter doesn't watch the games. And honestly, it's my fault. It's my fault as a guest booker because I'm like, oh, Carter's not able to be here. I should think of getting someone on here. And that's what really happens. But it's funny because, Dave, you and I had talked about kind of this idea for a podcast about a week and a half ago, which was there's been a talking point, and Carter and I have said it ourselves, that in order for the Cavs to be a contender, Evan Mobley needs to be that number one. And I think it's actually a really interesting discussion because the Cavs are trying to balance two kind of ideas of trying to win now as well as develop some of their young players. And I want to start things off with kind of that statement of if the Cavs want to contend, Evan Mobley needs to be the number one. First of all, before we dive into the conversation, do you agree with that statement?
No.
That's nice.
I mean, listen, I mean, if he is, that's amazing because then what is Donovan Mitchell? Then you have two guys that are like top 20 players, and Darius Garland, who's an all-star, and Jared Allen, who's an all-star. I mean, it seems like you'd have a super team if Evan Mobley was good enough to be your number one option in his second season.
Mm-hmm.
You have two number one options already that are guards. They put pressure on the defense at every single level. They get to the rim. They shoot deep threes. They're both really good at shooting off the dribble. I just think that you can just be patient with Mobley's offensive game as far as being more aggressive or whatever people want him to do as a number one option, which, again, it just doesn't make any sense. You have two number one options right now, one of whom in the playoffs, like we know he can do it in the playoffs. So why would you reconfigure yourself to, around Mobley as this number one guy when it's a second-year player who, as of right now, like his calling card is his defense. He's your number one guy on defense, I guess, maybe 1B behind Jared Allen. But that's a weird conversation in general, if that's something that's happening, which I haven't seen it.
Yeah, well, I think the Cavs have put that pressure on Mobley themselves, which is like, hey, if we want to be like a true contender, and in fairness to them, we have seen a long line of really good teams with really good players not make it to the promised land because they didn't have a top 5 guy. I don't think Donovan Mitchell before the season, I don't think anyone had him in the top 5, top 7 conversation. I think they probably do now. Darius.
Ooh. No, hold on. No, he's having a really nice season, but I don't think anybody's got him in top 5.
5 strong. 5 strong. Even as a
top
Donnie
7,
believer.
top 8 though. He's in that conversation.
Okay.
Chill.
No, I know. I don't want to be that guy who's like, wait on this one.
But no one really thought that. I think everyone thought, okay, the Cavs and Jarrett, Darius, and Donnie, they might have 3 dudes that are maybe top 30, top 40 guys, but it's really hard to win without a top 5 one. And you look at Evan, and he is the one with the clearest kind of trajectory towards that arc. So I do understand it, but what I have really enjoyed is, I was just talking to one of my coworkers last night he was talking about so disappointed that the Mavs haven't been able to put anything around Luka, and I'm like, listen, this is LeBron in Cleveland 2.0, where he was so good, so fast. You didn't have a chance to surround him with talent, with young, prospects. You had to kind of just go for it right away because you were already a semi-contender no matter who you had around him. Like, Mobley ultimately has the greatest luxury in the league right now, which is like, hey, I actually don't have to stretch myself terribly on the offensive end. I can just try some things every now and again, flex out a little different part of my game, take a 3 every now and again, but it doesn't really matter if I put up 20 for my team to win. And like, that's a great luxury, and we're still seeing him test himself. I mean, if you watch those Bucks highlights, we saw him take Drew Holiday off the dribble on a bad closeout and finish through Brook Lopez. We saw him hit some pull-up 15-footers. We saw him bury George Hill in the post on like 3 consecutive possessions. So we're seeing the traits of a guy who can be a 20-point per game scorer. And like, I think anyone focusing on stagnation, I think it might just be or like the idea that he didn't get better. I think it just might be people not understanding that when people throw out Kevin Garnett comparisons, Giannis comparisons, Tim Duncan comparisons, they're saying that he could be, in that neighborhood of player 5-6 years from now. Like, those guys weren't like this as 21-year-olds. Tim Duncan was still beating up a future car salesman at Wake Forest at the time.
People forget it. They just think year 2, right? Like, Tim Duncan, look at how good he was. Well, yeah, he was able to rent a car in his second year in the league or whatever. So, look, man, Evan Mobley is a 20-point-a-game scorer now. He just doesn't have the usage. I mean, he takes 11 and a half shots a game.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, pretty efficient. Like, he's having a pretty efficient season. His effective field goal percentage is higher. Like, his true shooting's better. I just don't know what people want. And if you just watch him play, he knows where to be, like, to a greater degree. Yeah. His relocation. I mean, he's a big. Why is he relocating for? He's doing stuff that they clearly are asking him to do stuff, and he is doing it. Relocating on drives as a big and coming, through the lane. Like, there's a lot of times where he's catching these dump offs because he just kept moving, and a little bit of Steph Curry in there. Not quite, he's not stretching it out to the 3-point line. And I think where people are really concerned is that they had this idea in their head that this guy is going to be a stretch big. He's going to dribble the ball more. He's going to shoot more 3s off the dribble. He's just not that guy right now. Doesn't mean he won't be. But he's just not that guy. I mean, but if you look at his numbers, they're remarkably similar to last season as a rookie. And I think that's people look at numbers too much without actually watching games or thinking about the context of the team. But for his usage to have gone down slightly and for his numbers to stay like basically the same, his shooting is a little bit better while adding a piece like Donovan Mitchell to the offense, which could have been extremely disruptive to his development. I think that's a win, man. And they're a good team. His defense hasn't dropped off at all. You're beyond nitpicking if you're like going after Evan Mobley, a year and a half into his career where he's pretty much put up these numbers since day one. I mean, the guy is like very consistent. If this is his floor, wow.
It's absurd. Like his floor is a very helpful player on a team that's won a lot of games already, on one of the best defenses in the league when he's in the lineup. To me, when I hear, at least when I said at the start of the year, and Donovan Mitchell taking a leap, to me changes this conversation a little bit, because I think if you're talking about an actualized version of this Cavs roster that's contending for a championship, I think Donovan's probably going to be the leading scorer. Like, I think you're probably going to have him in that play finishing role. It's probably going to be Darius Garland's offense, because he's one of the best young point guards in the league. So I think people see that and they get confused, because you hear Evan Mobley would need to be the number one if they're going to contend. And for me, what that meant is, in order for the Cavs to contend for a championship, which I don't think they're going to do this season, but I do think that Evan Mobley needs to reach his potential. And when people say that, they think Evan Mobley's potential is so high that if he reaches it, he'd be the best player on the team. But that doesn't necessarily mean leading scorer on the Cavs, right? Like, I think especially when you're built around two young guards, Mobley's ability as a playmaker is going to be essential when you're talking about beating playoff defenses, because otherwise teams are going to be able to trap and cheat up on Garland and Mitchell and do things that they did to Portland, right, with Dame and CJ. If Evan Mobley is that guy that can break the defense and free those guys up and provide you with kind of that hub on the inside, that makes it so much harder to defend Garland and Mitchell. And to me, like, that's the most important thing, because if the Cavs contend for a championship, Garland and Mitchell might average more points per game, but people still would probably, it's almost similar to Tim Duncan, right? Where he wasn't the leading scorer on the Spurs. Manu and Tony were ahead of him, but everyone could kind of tell this is the heart and soul of the team, the anchor of the defense, and a crucial hub for what they do offensively.
One of the coolest... one of the coolest things that I think about that young duo in Darius and Evan is that they remind me of two players that never needed to score 40 to be uber valuable to take over a game. You know, I compare Darius to Steve Nash more than any other player because of his control. Obviously, his baseline forays are very reminiscent, but just in terms of his control of the game, like against the Bucks, he had 21 and 10, and like that's not a stat line, especially in the modern era, that's going to catch a lot of attention. But he thoroughly controlled the game. Evan, we compare him to Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan, Chris Bosh, three Hall of Fame quality big men that did not need to score 30 points or even grab 20 rebounds. Like, they didn't have to do that. Like, I think part of the reason I love basketball so much is because of the subtleties of the game, where all the little actions you can do when you're a savant that do not lead to a box score stat. And I think both of them have that, which makes Donovan such an awesome fit, because that man is among the best box score fillers in the league. So they kind of get to have their cake and eat it too with these styles of play.
Yeah, I mean, and then the fact that he brings that sort of defense and that sort of versatility, and he's a perfect partner with Jared Allen. I mean, and those two are perfect to have behind Garland and Mitchell. I mean, this is a really well-constructed starting five. And I mean, if we talk about Okoro, I actually like how he's been playing lately. Like, if he I
wasn't expecting Okoro love, but here we go, baby.
Well, he's a guy I want to like. I love what he brings on the defensive end. Now, he's probably not going to shoot the three like this, for the rest of the year, but it's a positive sign.
Yeah.
But I just think that the roster construction is sort of perfect, and it should allow Evan Mobley to sort of come along slowly. This is going to allow Darius Garland to come along a little bit slower, because he's not asked in crunch time every single time to do stuff and fail over and over and over again. Look, the Spurs managed to create Kawhi Leonard, right?
Yeah.
Kawhi Leonard
possibly in a lab, right? We don't know.
But I mean, when he came in the league, it's not like they just said, "Hey, Kawhi, here you go. Take the ball, go do it."
I mean, one of my favorite Kawhi stats is I think it took him until year 5 to score 30 in a game. Like it was just a balanced attack, right?
It's just expectations are different, right? Mobley surprised everyone by being, the level of player that he was right off the bat. And, then you have people talking about him. Oh, wow, this guy, he's going to be up there with Giannis in like 3 years. Oh, let's pump the brakes.
Yeah.
He's very good. He's got amazing feel. But, if he's a top 10 player at year 5, do you care that he's not like your number one option in year 2? I don't care.
Not one bit. I wanted to ask you, though, because Justin brought up the shooting. You brought up the shooting. And something that I do think is really important to say is I don't think he needs to become an elite shooter or even a good three-point shooter to be an elite offensive player. And I'm curious what you think about that.
I mean, it'd be nice.
It'd be nice, sure, but I don't think that precludes his ability to be a elite offensive player because of his feel, his touch,
right,
and his he's still a kid physically. Like he's got a lot of strength to add on.
What I'd like to see from him, I don't care. Making shots is less important than taking shots sometimes, unless you're Andre Robertson, right? In which case you are the worst shooter to ever play in the NBA, and no one's ever going to guard you, no matter how much you shoot. But Mobley's going to get guarded. He needs to shoot it more. That's it. I don't care if he makes it. He's got to shoot it more because he needs the defender to come out. When the defender comes out, I know he can put it on the floor and get around the defender. He can attack a closeout. So he's got to create the situation where he essentially puts pressure on the defense from outside. And that just requires him to shoot it. Like I'd like to see his attempts get up to like 3 or 4 a game.
Yeah.
If he hits 1 every couple games, that's worth it, right? Like he doesn't need to be Kevin Love. He doesn't need to be a knockdown guy. You're not going to run 3-pointer. Like you're not going to draw up plays for Evan Mobley on this team to shoot the 3. So who gives a shit if he can actually, like who cares if he's sticking it 47% of the time, but he has to shoot it, especially when it's open because, they'll drop back and everything's gummed up and you just got to take those. So putting pressure on the defense is important, but being a knockdown guy doesn't matter. He'll hit. I think his jumper is good enough. His touch is good enough that he's eventually going to hit at around league average, 34 to 36%. But if he can just be at 3 or 4 attempts a game, that's perfect. That's great because now you have to guard him out there.
Yeah, people lost their minds when the ESPN article came out talking about using Giannis as someone that showing Mobley Giannis's film and saying this is kind of what you can become. When you actually read the article, so much of it was look at the dedication he had on his body, right? Like look what you can do with from a very similar frame as a starting point. When you make these comparisons, it doesn't mean like Mobley has to become Greek in order to like live up to those kind of comparisons. Right, like
might help.
You never know, right? I hear it's a great country, but like it's about reaching your potential, and his potential and his ceiling is going to look different than any other player. And right now, a player that I kind of comes to mind sometimes with Mobley is Marc Gasol, because so often he's getting those touches at the top of the key, and he's just making the right basketball play. And what I liked about the game against the Bucks was that he was being more assertive in those spots, even though, there's probably a right pass to make to someone that's open. Force the issue a little bit more. Like when you say that Mobley needs to take more shots, I don't necessarily even care that much about the 3. Like I'd like to see like maybe 2-3 a game if it comes in the flow of the offense, but I want to see more of kind of the shots at the free throw line, right? Like take that 15-16 footer, attack the basket, do a little more with your touches, because at this point Mobley's getting a just shy of 60 touches a game. There's more shots within there, right? Like there are opportunities for him to be more assertive, and I think that developing that trait, and maybe it comes not necessarily with the starters, more when you're staggering throughout the course of a game, but I think developing those traits is going to lay a foundation for a more versatile offense that can allow the Cavs to combat some of what they're going to see in the playoffs when it comes to defenses.
Yeah, and I do think they're going to see there are some scabs to pick on at this for this Cavs offense that Mobley's going to have to be relied on to solve. Like it or not, their backcourt is small. So when teams are switching and throwing length at them, Mobley's going to have to beat switches in the post. Like that is kind of the number one like can you stay big predictor is like, are you going to beat your mismatches when they put guards on you? Can you get offensive boards? And that's why I was so encouraged by the fact that they threw 3 straight post ups to him when Bucks were some dubious soft switching last night or 2 nights ago, where they were just giving Mobley whatever he wanted, and they generated a clean look 3 possessions in a row, and like that's the kind of thing you're going to need to see when teams blitz Donovan and you catch it on the short roll with a 4-on-3. Does your handle hold up to playoff scrutiny? Can you make the right decisions? Those are the kind of things that we need to see him continue to exhibit. That's why I thought that game was so exciting. Like, obviously, 38 points on 19 19 made field goals is really cool, but I thought it was the way he did it. It was a super diverse attack, and that's really what I wanted to see.
Well, shooting over guys, right? I mean, Kevin Durant does it all the time, and
he was cooking Brook Lopez,
stuff, right?
Lopez had nothing to do with him.
Yeah, that's the big thing, right? Like, you want to see him assert himself and actually take the shots when guarded. Shooting over guys, he's got to make some tough ones. Like, all the greats do. That's one of the signifiers of being a great offensive player is you hit these tough guarded shots. I really wish he could pick up one of the, like, DeAndre Ayton's little jump hook. Right. If he had a little post move that felt like, okay, he can get to this, maybe they go to that early, even see if you can get him in a rhythm in there a little bit more. But this is more a strategy and tactics conversation, but they don't need to do that. Like, this is the other thing is that the points can come to him when they're at full strength. But part of it is going to be, being more assertive when he gets those switches, especially in the playoffs, because, like, you're right. Boston in particular is going to be a tough matchup if it's, if Cleveland draws them. And with the length that they have, Jason Tatum is going to be hell on Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. So that's going to be a big series for him if they wind up, matching up in the playoffs, because he's going to be the one. It's not going to be Jared Allen. It's going to be Mobley.
Yeah, I mean, Mobley's got the high ceiling for a reason. I do want to know, just in the macro, like, and Justin and I have talked about this a lot. If you're coaching the Cavs, what is your, like, if 0 is on a slider is focusing 100% on just winning, just whatever gets you the win over the course of as many regular season wins as possible, and 100 is you're kind of going out of your way to develop Mobley and get him touches in reps in places where he's not comfortable. Where would you live on that slider if you were a coach?
I mean, I want to win the games.
Yeah, I do too.
But that's me.
I feel like he'll get it over time,
Yeah. Well, dude,
there are opportunities.
You learn a lot when you win. You learn a lot when you win. If you contribute to winning, you learn a lot, whether it's a big contribution or a small contribution. Like, a lot of times you find out who you are as a player in basketball, as a role player, because every single guy has a role, but just winning games actually does matter. It matters, man. Like, this idea that development,
and it's not mutually exclusive either.
Look, you can punt games forever.
Yeah.
Orlando Magic have been punting games, and now guess what? They're just playing guys who know how to play. They've got good players now, and they're winning some games. The games they're winning matter. The Phoenix Suns, those 8 games that they won in the bubble, that mattered for Devin Booker.
Yeah. No,
so
I think
development, win those games.
I think development within the context of winning is so important, right? And that's like having the complaint, or not even the complaint, but having like the feedback of, oh, Evan Mobley's out there making the right basketball play. I'd like to see him call his own number a little more. Like, that's a good problem to have. And what I like so much about what the Cavs have built is that guys reaching their potential, like, the skill sets all fit. Like, Darius Garland, good lead guard, great in the pick and roll. Donovan Mitchell can play on ball, off ball. Garland can play on ball, off ball. Both of them work really well off of the bigs. Jared Allen fits the role perfectly. Like, these guys reaching their potential, it's not really going to take away for one another. Right? Like, for all the talk about Mobley and Garland regressing this season, which is ridiculous to me, Darius Garland last year averaged 21.7 points. Darius Garland this year, 21.7 points. Evan Mobley, 15.1 after averaging 15 last year. Like, they are still averaging the same number of points per game as they did last year while adding a 27 point per game player to that mix. I don't think people understand that that is improvement. You have shuffled down the pecking order, but have still remained as productive individually. And in Mobley's case, improved his efficiency in a dramatic way. In Garland's case, cut down the turnovers in a big way. Only Tyrese Halliburton is the only player averaging as many assists as Garland with fewer turnovers. Like, nobody else is doing it. Like, I just think people are, maybe it comes from like romanticizing last season and forgetting that it had ebbs and flows, ups and downs, but it just seems ridiculous to me.
Does it come from video games? I don't know.
Maybe.
Everybody's not going to get their stats all the time, but also like the point you just made, they added Donovan Mitchell and Garland's numbers are basically the same. Oh, he's shooting slightly better from three, turning the ball over less. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. There's not much higher to go and actually play basketball with other good players. Like, you've got to share the ball too. His usage is about the same.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
With Donovan Mitchell is a real dude in the NBA. They added him to the team, and Darius Garland is so good, he didn't have to take a back seat.
And what's cool is I feel like they've really leveraged, one, that those are two smart dudes, but that they're two good dudes. You know, like two pretty selfless players. Like, I feel like I've never seen less kind of pulling where you've got two dudes who are just used to having the ball every possession. I really, you never see the big gets the rebound and both guys run to go get the ball. Like, like right. There's not that your turn, my turn. It feels like a very natural partnership. And that's just not that common for young players. And like, I just really think it speaks to the kind of guys they are and just how smart both those players are.
Yeah, I mean, and the culture. This is San Antonio Spurs stuff that they're kind of putting together. You know, when you look at the young talent, they've got a star in Mitchell, obviously, not homegrown, but still got a star after they rebuilt from the LeBron, emptying of the cupboard. And now you've got two young guys. They can probably stagger all these contracts out to make it work for a really long time. And you've got your bases covered as far as having a good basketball team. The floor of this team is not going below the 5 seed, or the 5th best team in the East.
Yeah, calamity would have to strike,
Right. Yeah, that's your floor. And that's a good place to be, especially if you look at the league. I mean, look, Kevin Durant is getting older. He keeps getting injured. I'm not saying that, he's going to stay injured next year, but they can't really count on him. Who knows when Kyrie's coming back? So the East might even be different at the top, and Cleveland may have less competition up there. You never know with Philly, right? They could go one way or the other. They look good right now, but you never know.
And they're still depending on a player, that is on the back end of his, life cycle as a star. And right. Harden.
Yeah, although he's playing
awesome.
So well,
he's
right?
playing awesome, but he's old. He's probably got two more years of this level of play. Right. Probably. I mean, every NBA player is a cyborg now, so I don't know.
Right, that's true. He's going to play until he's 80. Boston, and Milwaukee, they're going to be there because Giannis isn't going anywhere. Jason Tatum's not going anywhere. So you're going to have to deal with them.
Can I note the rest of Milwaukee's core is sneaky pretty old.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah.
Like, that also matters a little. Best player in the world, but it matters.
But I do think you'll be able to build around Giannis a little bit better than, maybe Embiid, right?
I would agree.
But so I just don't, I think this team is going to be in the top half of the East for the next few years. And if Mobley can develop into the guy that everyone sort of was thinking he was going to be last year around this time, when, there are people in basketball that I really respect who are like, well, it's Mobley's league now. And I was like, all right, hold on.
I mean, I love the man.
They're like,
but
he's going to be, early. I mean, these people saying he's going to be the best player in the East in like 3 years. And that is a lot. That's a lot. He's
being the best player in a conference there's only 2 of them.
That's right.
I ran the numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. Steph Curry and Giannis. So.
Okay.
We'll
keep her moving there.
Come on.
Steph comes back and they fall below 500. He's out. They go back to 500. I don't know about all that, Dave.
Oh,
but,
man. Don't get me started on Steve Kerr hating Kevon Looney all of a sudden. I just don't understand, man. He wouldn't do this against the Cavs.
No. Well, the Cavs aren't a finished product yet, but you know what? I know a finished product that I just absolutely love, and that is Zoom. Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects. Dave, I want to go back to you for a second here because you were starting on the Garland praise, and even though it's not really on the rundown, I'm a sucker for it. Darius Garland plays, like, in my eyes, my favorite brand of basketball stylistically. Like, I just love the way that he can get his own shot and create for himself and others. Seems to be a narrative that drives me nuts that he and Mitchell haven't had good games on the same night, which is insane if you look at November and basically every month where Garland hasn't been hurt. But what do you think his ceiling is? Because as high as Mitchell is playing, like as high of the level as Mitchell is playing right now, I still think Darius Garland can get to that level. And I'm sure people would have debates and whatnot if that were to occur and prioritize things at different ways. But it's, in terms of tiers, I feel like Darius Garland has that kind of a potential to get up to that level.
I mean, I think he could be an all-NBA guy. I mean, he's really, really good. His deep three ball is excellent. His shooting off the dribble is excellent. I mean, he's a little bit of like Steve Nash mixed with Steph Curry. I'd love to see him do even more of the Curry stuff. I think this is a conversation we've had quite a bit. If Mobley could be their offensive Draymond, that would be something pretty special, right?
He's got a little Nash to his own detriment sometimes. Where it's like sometimes you'd be watching those Suns teams and you'd be like, Steve, you're just going to have to shoot a little bit more, buddy.
Well, yeah, honestly, the critique I had in the Bucks game was right now I think he plays a little too much like current Chris Paul in terms of pace, and he needs to play like Hornets Chris Paul in like and actually push the pace, get into the sets a little bit quicker, because as the point guard, that's his responsibility. That's his duty to dictate how the team's going to play. You're never going to be a complete fast break team where you're like leading the league in pace, but getting into their sets quicker, I think would be a real kind of not a massive change to his game, but I think it would have a large impact on how effective the Cavs are.
Well, I mean, they're a team that should be trying to get into half court stuff fast, right? Because a lot of their
brother, do
plays,
they not?
Yeah, I was gonna say a lot of their plays they take time to develop. And this is where, that the Mobley's growth, I think, away from the ball and learning to relocate has been big for them, because as those plays develop and break down, I think he's been pretty good this year about picking spots to flash to for those guards when they're driving. Like, he's a little bit of a release valve inside for them. And more so than just in the dunker spot. Like, hanging out in the dunker spot is great. You get a lot of buckets there, but that doesn't necessarily form good foundations of offense, because the defense knows where you are, so they can account for you eventually if it becomes a problem for them. Whereas what Mobley's been doing, a little bit more freelance stuff, I think can open up even more for Garland as a penetrator and as a playmaker. But you're right, he probably needs to call his own number a little bit more. I mean, you've got 2 30-point-a-game scorers on the roster to me. Yeah. I think you can have any night. To have that kind of firepower is great. What do you want? They're not both going to average 30, and also Mobley's going to be your number one option, scoring 25 a game. I mean, like, this is one of these things where maybe it's Cavs fans have it too good right now. They just have too many options. Because what would happen if Donovan Mitchell was like, okay, I'll take a back seat and 18 points a game? Yeah. And well, what's wrong with Donovan Mitchell?
We gave up 3 first. For 18 points a game?
Right.
Yeah. I forgot until recently, because with the whole narrative of Garland and Mitchell not having a good game on the same night, I went back and looked at it. And November, Garland averaged 24-9, Mitchell 27-4. Just like, it's impossible for them to not be having good games at the same time. And I believe there's 15 games that they both scored 20 in, and just like a couple handfuls of games where it's like 18-19 with the other one. But coming across that, like looking through that, I forgot how ridiculous the Charlotte game was, where Darius had 41-6, Mitchell 34-6, Mobley 21-18, and Allen 20-12. Like, that is video game. That is when I'm playing 2K with the sliders all messed
started,
around,
brother. This Dave, you know what this animal does?
Oh no!
This animal will play on like 5-minute quarters,
6-minute baby,
at like 150 possessions per 100, or and then he will have the game prorate his stats as though they were 12-minute quarters. So when he goes to check his team stats, it'll be like Darius averaging like 46 points a game, Donovan averaging 43 and 12. It's like, my God, Justin, there's just no respect for the fidelity of true basketball out of you.
Gosh, that's insane.
It's
I'm a
horrible.
Man. I'm a very complex man, Carter.
And then this absolute dirtbag will post his screen grab of his stats in our Discord like he's proud of himself.
I am proud of myself. I'm such a complex person, Carter. I can enjoy that, and I can also enjoy Evan Mobley getting an honest 38 points without a free throw, without a three-pointer. I can appreciate so many different things in life, Carter, and I think you need to stop and smell the roses a little more.
I'll never smell that particular rose bush. Stinky one to me.
Dave, you mentioned that the Cavs, when it comes to their offense, they do take some time to get into their sets because, they are working with a spacing deficit a lot of the time. I think they get very creative with some of the split cuts they run. Horns is a bread and butter play for them. What are your impressions of the Cavs offense to this point? And do you think the potential for growth with that offense comes more from internal improvements, like maybe something schematic, maybe something developmental, or is it more personnel based that some changes are going to need to be made to bring in some spacing and shooters to unlock what this offense could be?
For the record, they are 10th in the league right now in offensive rating.
I'll tell you, and this is going to be a unique response maybe to this, but they are leaving money on the table by not crashing the glass.
Ooh.
I want to see Mobley and Allen on the offensive glass, and that's room for improvement for Mobley right away.
17th in the league, by the way.
Get those offensive rebounds up. You're playing the Twin Towers, man. Use them. Offensive rebounding, if you look around the league, the finals last year was settled on the offensive glass. Wiggins and Looney were monsters on the offensive glass for the Warriors. Offensive rebounding is just, if you're not crashing the glass right now, you're behind the times offensively.
Yeah, right now they're 14th. I just looked it up. They're 14th in the league in opponent fast break points. They're 17th in the league in offensive rebounding. And I do think
you're not doing either.
You're not doing either that great. I think that's pretty clear. Do you think that you put yourself a little bit at risk? Something that I've noticed about this team, Dave, is that one of the reasons they can be a little vulnerable to that is they're playing two bigs, oftentimes underneath the free throw line. They often have Isaac Okoro posted up in the corner, and then if one of their guards is on a foray to the hoop, sometimes they're often having four players underneath their own rim.
Shooting threes.
Yeah. And how do you think that they'll be able to crash the boards while still maintaining the floor balance that we know you need to actually stop teams in transition?
Well, I think you would have to adjust, and two guys are just going back on the shot, right? Like, I mean, this is...
I think they get caught gawking a little bit more than they should.
That's definitely a thing. I mean, but that's a young team thing too, right? Like, that's pretty common for young teams to get, these sort of mental mistakes where you're just in the game and you want to see the ball go in, especially the shooters. Man, it's hard to work out of guys to get the shot up and get back, and that's basically what they'd have to do. But if you're going to play those two bigs, one of them needs to crash just about every single time, if not both. Okoro is actually a decent offensive rebounder if you bring him in, just as a good athlete. Donovan Mitchell, have him crash. He can really get up. So I just want to see him. That's one of the things I would do. Now, that's not like a schematic change necessarily. Like, it's not do more of this type of play. It's kind of an effort. No, it's not even an effort, because it is a decision. Like they have made a decision to sort of limit transition and to not actually attack the offensive glass. So I would just rather see them do it. I mean, you play two bigs, you might as well lean into it and try to be bigger. You're just leaving points out there. Mm-hmm. If they could pick up two or three extra buckets a game on offensive rebounding, that's huge. It's massive.
Yeah, that would make a big difference. And it's funny because I think sometimes this is just on me where I look at criticisms, and even if it's only 20%, that 20% always sticks out more. Like it even comes down to like the outlier shooting games. Like the Cavs did not have the effort they needed against the Golden State Warriors. I think they just assumed that the shots would start missing at some point because the backups were in, but they let them get comfortable, and by the time you turn it on, the Warriors were already in a groove and too hot. But everyone was sitting there thinking, oh, well, this is another outlier three-point shooting game, where it had been a long time since an opponent had shot well, but those games always stick out. And I think for criticism, like the criticism is always going to stick out more to me than the praise. And there just seems to be a lot of questions about the Cavs schematically.
So I just think those questions are wrong, man. Like your 10th overall offense playing three non-shooters or three reputed non-shooters, heavy minutes with players coming on and off the bench that are either non-shooters or having rough shooting seasons in the form of Kevin Love. So like,
well, I know what you think. I was going to ask Dave what he thinks.
I know. I'm setting it up.
He's setting me up.
Yeah, give me a set. Am I allowed to opine? You just went on a 30-minute monologue about.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, I've really, really been impressed by the schematics. Like, I feel like they've stolen just enough momentum. And I don't know if you feel this way, Dave, but the offense did get a lot of criticism the past couple of years for being overly simplistic. And I felt like you were kind of betting on, if you were a fan of JB and the offense he was putting together, that, he's just waiting on better personnel, and feels like better personnel's here and they're running more sophisticated stuff, right?
Yeah, basically. I mean, when you have better players, you can do things a little bit differently, a little higher level, and you've got high IQ guys. That's where we're really seeing things unlocked. And you have two dynamic ball handlers now. Like Colin Sexton, fine player, not Donovan Mitchell, not Darius Garland. And now you have two of those guys. It allows you to do more stuff. You can trust those guys a little bit more.
And you have a roster full of guys who you actually intended to roster, not guys you picked up through, we can buy a second rounder here if we take on this guy.
Right.
Like that goes a long way too.
It's a real team. Yeah. So, the whole playbook is out. I mean, this is the sort of team that you break the whole playbook out for. You have, a veteran guard in Donovan Mitchell who knows how to lead an offense, and you've got Darius Garland who, pretty damn good. So yeah, I think that, I guess from a play perspective, they're doing a little bit more, but I just want to see them get to it faster, and then more on the offensive glass. And I think that you can just boost your offense just a little bit more with those two things. You're going to get more possessions. Just getting into your stuff faster gives your offense more time to work, and offensive rebounding and a faster pace gives you more possessions. And this is a good team. They should want more possessions. Right? Yeah. More possessions shakes out. The math is in your favor as a good team.
Yeah, and I'm also just looking forward to having some continuity. Like Donovan Mitchell's listed as probable for the game in New York. This is going to be the healthiest the Cavs have been in a very long time. Darius has lost the thumb sling. I'm encouraged to see that. He's been playing a lot better. So hopefully they're going to get a little bit of an extended run here. And for me, the biggest thing is when it comes to talking about shot distribution, like for the people that say, well, you don't think you're contending for a championship and Mobley's growth is the most important thing, so why are we not force feeding him? To me, when it comes to like the evolution of the Cavs offense, I want to see the Cavs offense evolve as better personnel comes in. Do you make adjustments? Are there additions to the offense that utilize that personnel? When Darius or Evan add skills or they become more polished in certain areas? Do you weaponize that and use it within the offense? And I feel like the offense that the Cavs run has been evolving with the personnel and with the team. And that's the most important thing. Like, you are going to have issues. You're going to have nights where the execution just isn't there, whether it's on the offensive or defensive end. Cavs need to find more consistency. I said at the top of the show, I'm sick of saying the phrase, that was the worst loss of the year. That's happened a few too many times recently. And it's disappointing that those games have been the ones where you think you could win. You're up 14 against the Wolves and Gobert goes down and you lose that one. The Jazz game where you give up a 7-point possession and you lose that. Warriors without Steph and those guys. But when you're talking about the long-term health and outlook of the team, the fact that they're competitive against the Memphis Grizzlies while they're as hot as can be without Donovan Mitchell, the fact that they were able to get up at a rest disadvantage and take care of business and bounce back against the Milwaukee Bucks, that's the kind of stuff that makes me feel still optimistic about what they can be this season, even though we know that what they've built isn't all about this year.
The other thing is, this time last year, did anyone think Boston was going to the finals?
They were below 500,
yeah,
I believe.
So, this idea that anything's set in stone. No, man, there's too much parity in the league. It's one player getting hurt can change everything. And we already know that. And somebody gets hurt almost every year.
Yeah.
Things happen.
Cavs have had their share of that already this year, too.
Guys make leaps. Teams make leaps. I'm not willing. I'm out on this idea that if you weren't expected to win a title coming into the season, there's no way you're winning a title. I think we're past that. I think it's over. Yeah. I mean, Denver might make the finals this year. And Boston looks like the favorite in the East,
that was
right?
just predetermined, brother.
I think there's too much inexperience though with the Cavs. Like that's likely my thing.
Yeah, probably. But wouldn't you compare them favorably to Memphis?
Yeah. Who I also think are too young.
But people don't absolutely right. But if Memphis made the finals, no one would think it was crazy.
No. Well, when you're playing in the league's junior varsity conference, Dave.
Ben Gulliver is going to hunt you down now, Carter.
You guys remember that growing up, like the Western Conference was all the soft teams?
Oh,
you guys remember that?
Yeah. The finesse.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they
played different.
Yeah. No,
those guys just hang out at the beach all the time.
I mean, if you believe iron sharpens iron, this is the perfect Eastern Conference for the Cavs to come up because they got a ton of MVP candidates, a lot of really good teams, and it's just so much more competitive. Like I saw the Lakers, are they a game out of 6th in the West? Like that's insane to me.
I've stopped looking at the standings in the West because it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it boggles the mind.
Let me know in mid-March what the playoffs look like. It's every single day. I mean, the Warriors just do something dumb like twice a week and lose lose games that they should win. And
I haven't witnessed that. I wish they would do that against us.
Yeah, that's true. That was a bad loss for you.
We saw strength in numbers in a way that I just hated. And you know what? I made this joke on Twitter, but the monkey paw definitely curled because we said on the podcast, you know what? I'd take a split of this weekend. No matter what the form was, Warriors, Bucks, I'll take that split. That's perfectly fine if you walk away with one win. And on paper, if you were going to pick which game you'd rather win, it's the Bucks. They now have tied the season series against the Bucks. It's going to come down to division record. The Cavs have a much better division record at this point. They're basically in the driver's seat for the tiebreaker with every top team in the East, with the exception of Brooklyn. But losing that game to the Warriors is just so painful because it's just another missed opportunity to make up some ground on these other teams. But from here on out, the Cavs have the second easiest schedule in the league. And this week right now is a great opportunity for them to go get some wins.
Absolutely. I do want to ask you though, Dave, we got the deadline coming up here in just a couple weeks. If you are Kobe Altman and you might have the ammo to make a move, what kind of upgrades are you looking for this roster? Is it pure shooting? Is it size on the wing? What are you valuing most?
I mean, if you can find size on the wing, let me know because everyone's looking for it. You could have gotten Rui Hachimura for whatever that's worth, right? Like, there's just the 3-and-D wing market is non-existent.
Yeah.
Everybody has a chance. Everybody feels like they have a chance. And so, none of those guys are out there and available.
Especially if you don't have any first to trade, which they don't.
Yeah, I think you're looking at like swapping money, but hopefully getting some shooting. I know everybody's favorite trade is Tim Hardaway Jr. for Karis LeVert, and that's a tough trade for Dallas to make.
Yeah,
believe it or not, which says a shit ton about Dallas. More so than I think Cleveland, right? Like Cleveland could use Tim Hardaway Jr., but Dallas, like, they need him every 2 games to have a good game.
Yeah.
That's a luxury that the Cavs can survive. The Mavericks really, they can't do without him. And I don't know if Karis is enough to get them to move Tim Hardaway Jr., but a Tim Hardaway Jr. type be fantastic for you guys.
Guys like Dougie McBuckets, I think this team,
and that would be pretty cheap.
Yeah, I think the report today was like 2nd round pick and or something along those
two
lines.
2nd round picks for McDermott.
And
he's a guy who can play the 4.
He can slide
along with one of the bigs. So I think that's a guy who works out well.
The comparison I've been making, and I'm interested in what you think about this, because this team just has, obviously Darius and Donnie are elite 3-point shooters. Kevin just hasn't been able to do it ever since he broke his thumb. So you look at the 2 great shooters on the team, they're guys who have the ball in their hands the most, which is, a challenge. And I just can't help but think that if they can find a true like elite shooter, not the pretty good guys, but the guys who are like teams are panicking to fly at closing out on them. Right. I think it'll have a similar effect as to when the team traded for Channing Frye in 2016, where, the second, Frye was the definition of a distressed asset coming from Orlando. No one thought anything of that move. That was kind of like a nice depth trade. And then the second he flares out and runs his first pick and pop, everyone goes, oh, and I really think that this team is really hurting for an elite off-ball shooter that doesn't happen to also have a usage rate of 25 plus, like their 2 star guards.
Where are you going to find that guy?
It's hard.
That's hard. The thing, right? Like that's the thing everybody's been looking for. I mean, look, man, Miami would maybe give you Duncan Robinson.
I don't know about all that. Like, part of why we don't get into the fake trade machine on here is it's just so hard to know what's available, who's available for what. Like, I know I've said this a million times, but if I came on this podcast and said, "Oh yeah, Dante Exum and the Bucks late first for Jared Allen," the Cavs can do that. They can get Jared Allen.
Get laughed off the airwaves, my friend.
Yeah, I'd look like a crazy person, and I already do that enough. So like, it's just not productive. But I've said to Carter, you're probably not going to get a 3-and-D with size. That's just the hardest thing to get. I'd probably prioritize shooting over anything else, right? Like, even if it comes in like a 6'4", 6'5" player like a Tim Hardaway Jr. that can get threes up. I'm fine with that because you have the size to make up for that. And at the end of the day, I think we probably make just a little bit too much of 6'5" or 6'7" functionally in the NBA. So that would probably be the priority. And I mean, it's tough. Like you talk about who the Cavs can move to get those kind of players, and it's guys that are in the rotation that have been helpful. Like right now, the best fifth man in terms of lineup data standpoint with the core 4 is Karis LeVert. That's been the best combination. He's been very good for them this year. And Jetty Osmondson expiring, but Jetty's also been someone that can be that spark plug off the bench. And Kevin Love has played a big role, and he's an expiring contract, right? So it's going to be tricky. I don't envy the position Kobe Altman's in, but
this is when it gets hard. It is
finding
so
value
much
in the margins, right?
And I've said this a few times on these airwaves, which is that it is so much easier to get a deal done when the other teams don't respect your team, when no one's worried about you. Like I guarantee you Sean Marks was like, they can take Jared Allen. We're not worried about the Cavs. And now they gotta be, And when you're probably a tier 2 contender in the league, trying to become a tier 1 contender, people are pretty freaking careful about giving you useful players. So I think it's going to be a really interesting challenge for Kobe in a spot we've never seen him operate. We know he loves wheeling and dealing. 14 midseason trades since he took over. So, and we know he's a great
7
relationship
of them with Utah.
Yeah, only 9 or 14 of them. But this is a different landscape, and it'll be really interesting watching him learn on the fly. I think that's one of the fun things about this stage of the team's development curve is we're gonna watch the Cavs have to solve new problems in the postseason with this young core. We're gonna have to see their front office solve new problems. We're gonna have to see their coaching staff solve new problems, and pretty much across the board, that's kind of the situation we're in. Almost everyone is gonna have to take some lumps and learn some hard lessons, and figuring out how they come out of it, I think, is going to be a real indicator to, this team's mid to long-term future.
I mean, it's a young organization, theoretically.
Kobe was a very, very, very junior GM when he got the job. JB is one of the youngest coaches in the league. So, even at the leadership level, it's a very young
but with a lot of experience.
Yes.
This is the thing, right? So they have a lot of experience, but they're young. I talked about this. I've been talking about this to you guys for years now. I've been really impressed with the job the front office did. There were no home runs until they got Donovan Mitchell. Big home runs that we saw coming. Yeah. It was a lot of singles. A lot of doubles. I mean, I would call Jared Allen a home run, and I'd call drafting Mobley. But you get a pick that
thanks,
high.
Houston.
Yeah. So thank you, Houston. But even Darius Garland, Garland's turned into a home run, but wasn't the case.
Right off the bat, right? Like he was injured, and it was like, is this guy going to be able to, are we going to see anything out of him? All I knew about him really was that he was just an amazing passer, and had no idea he was going to be all these other things. And so, development has been great there. I think, look, man, nice and steady. The organization is just nice and steady.
Which, buddy,
and that's a good place to be.
After all the hubbub in between and during the LeBron years, it's kind of nice to be steady.
Well, that's okay. You're going to trade Evan Mobley for him this summer.
Yeah,
go through it all again.
Many well-sourced folks are saying, "My goodness,
no, I would.
My goodness, of course
I would not. Oh,
of course not, Dave.
No,
come on. Who are you talking to?
Collect all these second-round picks all over again. The Lakers sent 3 off today. They're going to be recouping second-round picks until I'm, 70.
Before we get you out of here, Dave, and again, thank you so much for your time. You're always so generous, and just love talking with you.
You guys are my people.
Yeah, you're my guy. Let's get you out of here with this. Let's make you do a prediction. Where do you think the Cavs land in the Eastern Conference from a standing standpoint? Let's take the playoffs out of it. Obviously, they're untested. We'll see what the first round matchup is, and a lot of variables there. But where do you think they land?
I'm going to pull up the standings real quick. So, pardon me if I look
they are in the 5 seed.
Weird.
They are 6 games back of the Celtics, 1 game back of the Nets and Bucks, 2 games back of the Sixers.
Well, here's what I'm going to say. So Brooklyn, unfortunately, the Durant injury is a huge deal, but Brooklyn in the playoffs is going to be tough. I think that Brooklyn is not going to have home court advantage, unfortunately, because losing Kevin Durant is just too much.
We got them in the play, and I don't need to see them in the playoffs.
Well, it might be the 4-5 matchup.
Oh, I'm aware.
I think Cleveland, I guess it depends on the tiebreaker, but they're in the top 4 to me. This is a team that, when you've got this level of defensive talent and offensive talent, I think that, top half of the playoffs should be expected. They're better than Miami. I don't think necessarily that they're better in the playoffs than Brooklyn, but they're a better regular season team.
How do you compare them to Philly? Because to me, that's the really interesting one. And I think the Cavs, I know Philly's higher ahead of them right now, but you look at Philly's schedule, they haven't really played Boston, Milwaukee, Brooklyn. They still, I believe they have the hardest schedule left. And they're going to be playing a lot of those top teams. So whichever way that goes, whether they're winning them all or losing them, that's going to be helping the Cavs climb in the standings. But where do you see the Cavs kind of lined up with Philly?
If Philly's going to keep playing PJ Tucker, I like the Cavs.
Oh, man. PJ's such a winner. He's like Danny Green.
He is. Ooh.
Don't you dare. Don't you dare. There are two diehard Danny Green fans on this podcast.
If Cleveland really wanted to win a title this year, on a guy
coming off an ACL, is it Achilles? I don't remember.
It was an ACL and an MCL.
Oh, right.
This is why flopping is bad, guys. But I hope Memphis hangs on to him. Memphis will go to the finals if Danny Green plays for him.
Memphis is my pick to come out of the West. I really like Memphis. I don't think they're too young. I think they would have had a chance last year if Bane, Jaw were healthy and if Adams wasn't out with COVID. I think they would have had a chance to make the finals. I say this quite often talking about Memphis, but really any of these young teams that are got like a nice like core, and in particular, man, they have Ja and they have Jaren Jackson, and then that team rocks.
Then they fall into Desmond Bane, and it's like they remind me of like 2011, 2012 Oklahoma City Thunder. And now, granted, the Thunder had Kevin Durant, and that's you have a top 10 guy of all time, and that's a whole different conversation. But those guys, like the too young thing, if they were all rookies, but these guys they've been in the playoffs. They've gotten this whole rivalry thing happening with a bunch of different teams. Like they've been in the
Jaren's in year 5. Like Jaren Jackson Jr. is in year 5.
Yeah, and so I just think if Memphis makes it, it maybe it's a surprise because the Warriors didn't make it, or the Nuggets.
That's some respect this is the year on my boy Jokic's name.
Well, the Nuggets should make it this year to me.
Yeah.
But Memphis, I mean, if they make it, nobody should be shocked.
No, they absolutely
Cleveland
can.
Look, if Cleveland makes it, I will be shocked because the competition in the East, like you've got to get through Milwaukee and Boston. Yeah. That's tough. And guess what? To get to those guys, you may have to beat Brooklyn or you may have to beat Philly.
Yeah,
it's so funny to me. Like,
and if you get seeded so well you can avoid those guys, you still might have to play a super battle-tested Miami team.
Yeah, I know.
Who have made a finals.
Play Jimmy Butler in the playoffs.
No. East is bananas, man.
You're going to lose a limb, right? And it's so funny to me that people. Like there's so much panic of, okay, well, what if the Cavs do lose in the second round and they have to go up against Milwaukee? Like we used to, when we talk about basketball, we would romanticize that struggle. Like Michael Jordan, it took him, was it 7 years before he made the finals, man. Right? Like
I was a Bulls fan growing up. I hated the Pistons because they just beat us all the time.
That was romanticized, right? Like you run into an obstacle, it takes a few years, you learn something from the experience, you add something in the off season, you change your game to beat these guys, and then you get over the hump. I've been told that's better than losing in the finals. But like we're now at this point where if you don't do it in year one, it's that's a character flaw. Like you're not going to get over the hump. You're a career loser. You don't got the clutch gene. You came up short. Like I just find like the discourse has been so poisoned, like especially when it comes to young teams. This is what it looks like. This is what especially as like player movement actually seems to be coming down a little bit and these teams are having more sustained runs. This is what normal looked like in the NBA.
Mm-hmm. The 89 playoffs that Detroit beat Chicago, I think often about the conversations that would be had in our space after that. Well, should Michael Jordan ask for a trade? You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. But I don't know, man. Like I like patience. I don't care if teams win championships. I mean, I'm lucky because I'm not a fan. I don't root for any one team. I like fun teams, whether they win a title or not. It's just cool. Like they're just out there. Those titles don't really mean anything like in the big, the grand scheme of the universe. So if your team is fun, you should just enjoy it.
I disagree, man. I disagree. Some titles mean a lot.
Well, some do. But
then others kind of surrounding them don't.
It's fun if you've got a fun team, right? Like it is fun to go through those struggles. And of course, the ideal scenario is it works out in a title. Like that's the best as a fan, as a sports fan, is to watch the guys, be bad, come together, get better, and graduate, right? Like it's just like watching a kid grow up. Carter. I mean,
very similar.
Let us know how that goes.
Lot of connections. I'll tell you what.
Yeah. Well, they think the most important a lot when they're young, and then as they get older, they do it less and less and less. And then
I'll tell you what, you sound
win.
like a parenting expert right now, Dave.
Less and less games like the one against the Warriors. That sounds good. I think that's basically the poop equivalent. But you know what? Like, we'll see. And I think for me, what I want to see, I want my team to be in the mix. And I want my team to be trending in the right direction. Mm-hmm. And I think it's hard to argue that the Cavs aren't firmly in both of those camps, right? Like, there's just so much upward mobility with this roster. Jared Allen's 24 years old. Like, that's crazy.
You guys have a bunch of cool players, too. It's not, look, you guys aren't out here trying to root for James Harden.
Taking shots.
Great basketball player, but man, he's hard to watch. I like pounding the leather off the ball, falling all over the place. You got some good, honest basketball players. I think that's a good thing. I don't know. Cavs are easy. I mean, we talk about the Cavs on Nerder all the time because, they are such, to me, a promising team. I think that the future is, Evan Mobley is going to be an all-NBA player. I think he is the defense. Like, we know where the defense is. We need the offense to come up, of course, but this is we're at 1.5.
Dude, I was thinking,
I was
thinking the other day, this is a team that could literally have 4 Olympic players on it. That speaks to a lot about how many elite players are not from this country right now. But Darius, Jarrett, Evan, Donovan, all very, very legit candidacies to make the Olympic team. And that's honestly really, really
if they
cool.
just sent the Cleveland Cavaliers, we would be pretty good because, FIBA rules, Jared Allen could wind up being one of the greatest international centers of all time under FIBA rules. The ability to play the ball on the rim with his
double agent Jetty, though.
Intelligence.
And Ricky. Don't forget about Olympic Ricky.
Oh, my, no. It can't happen.
We're toast.
They'd be cooking us.
He's going to be
cooking us from within.
Yeah, he's going to be giving up all the secrets. All the recipes are going to be spilling out. But Dave, thank you so much. And you mentioned Nerder. Make sure you guys listening are subscribing to the Athletic NBA show. I love checking out all the podcasts on there, especially Nerder She Wrote with our good friend Dave DuFour. Big thanks, Dave, for you coming on, and a big thanks to everyone tuning in live on YouTube. If you want to support us, you can like and subscribe, click the notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you are listening via podcast and want to support us, you can leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chasedown's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of that review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.